Hello, AP Literature. So, if you are in periods 6 or 7, actually no, 6 or 5, then we of course had technical difficulties today. And I'm embarrassed by that. Feels like I should have this stuff figured out by now. But the truth of it is that my desktop computer on my desk in my judge classroom really just kind of pooped the bed today, to be honest about it. It just went to hell. It's now just got kind of weird electronic lines running up and down it. It seems like it's pretty well cached. So I'll obviously get that looked into and fixed. So what I decided to do instead was to come home and basically deliver you the exact same information, but via this video technology where ideally you are hearing my voice and seeing me in a little corner of your screen, and then of course looking at slides. So for both classes, we got through the pep talk part in the beginning. We got through the pre-writing passage about the sled dog racer. And now we're talking about the essay you wrote about atonement, part 2 of Atonement, Robbie at War. If you're in period 6, you heard a little bit of what's about to come, so you could skip forward a few minutes. If you're in period 5, I think this is about where the aliens took over my machine. So I will just start talking. I, of course, wrote this prompt. It comes from this novel that we're reading. It is a single moment that occurs inside Robbie's head while he's lying in a barn in France. In the passage, he thinks back to his time in prison, where, of course, he was sent for being falsely accused of sexual assault. And it also has him recalling the love of his life, Cecilia. And he is able to persevere because of the fact that it's better than prison, and he thinks of Cecilia, and that gives him hope. So that's a real quick summary of the passage. I want to look carefully at the language of the prompt here, as we always do. And so it asks you to analyze how the author portrays Robbie Turner's past and how it informs his present reality. That's the language we're going to zero in on. The rest of the language in this prompt, you're always going to see a version of it. Carefully consider, well-constructed essay, consider technique. You zero in on the parts that are specific to this passage, and you answer them. That is the first thing you're asked to do. And I should be moving forward to another slide. So I'm actually not going to read this. You can go, if you'd like, open up Canvas and find it and read it. And we'll just move forward to the pre-writing form. You could also pause your video right now and read it. Okay, let's move forward to the form. What does it ask you to analyze? Well, it asks us to analyze how Robbie's past informs his present. Suggested techniques, it does in fact list a few. Read the passage. What's your quick early answer to the prompt? This is my big message today. This was earlier in the pre-writing part 2. What some of you are doing is still not doing this. You're just repeating the language of the prompt. Don't do that. And you don't need to focus on technique yet. So you can just answer the language, in this case, about how Robbie's past informs his present. And what I wrote, I have the form in front of me that I filled out. I wrote, he finds hope in memories, which he calls to mind, despite the wretched nature of his life at war. So that's a little clunky the way it's written, but my early answer is the way the past informs the present, is that he thinks back to the past, and those memories allow him to move forward in 2 very different ways, of course. We then have the technique section, and I have 5 different ones I listed here. Of course, you'd only write about 2 or 3, but those are repetition, imagery, diction, and point of view, 4 actually. So with repetition, we have words like vanished and stupidity. With imagery, there's his wound, there's the smells, his memories of his time in prison. For diction, there's words like hope and chance that I think are really important when he thinks of Cecilia. And lastly, point of view. This is an incredibly subjective moment. We get it from one character's point of view, and that's important to our understanding of it. So we start out with answering the prompt. Here I expect to see something about prison. I expect to see something about his love for Cecilia and something about war. Not necessarily all 3. I think you probably needed at least one of those, if not 2. Where I start to get really worried is if I read an essay that starts out and I read that thesis and I don't know the characters at war, I don't know he was falsely sent to prison, and I don't know that there's a woman whose love keeps him going. If none of those elements are in there, I'm wondering what passage you're writing about. So job 1, answer the language in the prompt. Then we get to technique, we get to examples, we get to analysis. So let's go ahead and share with you the thesis that I wrote to, what you see in front of you here, what techniques to do what. McEwen uses repetition, diction, and imagery to paint a harrowing picture of how one wounded soldier survives the horror of war by focusing on his memories of his loyal girlfriend. So you can see that I chose to focus there on war in Sicilia. The prison for me will come up, I would think, if I were writing the essay itself. But I hopefully you can see the use of some precise, specific, interpretive words to describe this scene. Harrowing portrait, wounded soldier, horror of war, memories of loyal girlfriend. So that's maybe more than you need to do, but the idea is make sure you start out by being precise about how his past informs his present. Now, the one class that I got all the way through this, I didn't actually have a chance to sit here and write for you. And I think I'm going to not do that for you all in period 6 and 7 as well. I'm thinking I might record myself writing one at some point next week, for those of you that would find that useful. But for today, we're more focusing on accurately using our pre-writing form, really focusing on answering the language of the prompt, making sure you bring an interpretation of what you just read to your thesis immediately. That's our main focus today. So I'm just going to talk for another minute or two, and then I'm going to leave you all to go do your work. Not really a super long video here. So you have 2 assignments coming up this week. Many of you have done the first, some of you have done the second. The first is the pre-writing of Thomas Hardy's The Mayor of Casterbridge, 19th century passage. And then the second one is to write a full essay, like you did with Atonement, part 2, obviously, on Cherry Bomb by Maxine Clare, a contemporary passage. So 2 assignments on Canvas. They're waiting for you. Make sure you do them. As you do them, at this point, with the exam coming up so soon, I'd like to urge you to treat them like it's the actual real thing. So in the case of the pre-writing, and if you've done it already, you'll do another one next week. In the case of the pre-writing, that means somewhere in that 15-minute ballpark. That from the moment that you first look at that passage to the moment that that form is fully filled out, I think if you can do that well in 15 minutes, that's great. And if you're doing it in 5 minutes, you're not doing it right. So it is a longer process. So 15 minutes for that. And then when you sit down and write that full essay, where you'll do the pre-write again, but then also actually write it, then of course you're looking at that 45 to 50 range. So, on one hand, I feel like I'm throwing a lot of work at you because I'm asking you to do something challenging. On the other hand, I just told you have a little over an hour of work for the entire week. So I think we can handle that. And I would just urge you to, again, treat it like the real thing. Be alone in a room. Have your pre-writing form and your cheat sheet right next to you. Put your windows right up next to each other and sit there and do the best you can. The other important thing I'll say is that I wrote each of you feedback on the 2 you did last week. The pre-writing on the Cree musher, the sled dog race, and then the full essay on Atonement. And so I take time to do as accurate a job as I can on those quick comments. So please do look at them. Please see where I want to see improvement and make sure hopefully you're incorporating that as you move forward both this week and next week. So next week is the last full week before the exam. You will do another one of each of these. You will do another pre-write and another full write. And then that's it. That's it. I think that will be enough at that point. And you'll see my feedback on all of this and hopefully be in a really good place. As I started out saying today, I am confident that you all can be successful. The very last thing I'm going to say is that I'm holding office hours tomorrow from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. I'll do this at least once next week as well. And if any of you want to specifically know how you can do better on these essays, we could look at 1 or 2 together. We can do a one-on-one Zoom call. And we can, look at what's gone well and what you can improve upon. So there's a link in the email that I sent to you earlier this week. You can click on that and reserve a spot. And if you do, you'll hear from me. So that's it. Sorry about the technology problems today. I miss you all. I'm just asking you to do a little bit each week, but I want you to do it as well as you can. and you'll get feedback from me, and we'll stay in touch. Okay, email me with any questions. Bye.